Welcome. If you're watching this, you aren't just a viewer, you are part of the best tribe. My name is Miranda, and for 18 years, I lived a life that wasn't mine. I said I'd do it through Can We Stay, and I didn't find the exit until 2025. Today, I am free to talk about my feelings to empower you. This is Chapter 1, Episode 1 of my 80-episode testimony. We are starting at the very beginning because you cannot understand the escape until you understand the foundation. Before I was a wife, before I was a survivor, I was a girl with a blueprint that made me the perfect target. Let's talk about that girl. This is Chapter 1, Episode 1 of my 80-episode testimony. Wife at 20, free at 38, my 18-year escape. The foundation. Episode 1, The Blueprint of a Prey. Duration in 60 minutes. This episode is about why I was the perfect target for the subject before we even met. You will see this in his actions as we progress. They told me I was mature for my age. Looking back from 2026, I realized that maturity is just a lack of boundaries that a predator would eventually exploit. In the mirror, I see the foundation of my journey. Education built my resilience from the start. I'm Miranda. Before we talk about the marriage that began at 20, we have to look at the girl who existed before that choice. To understand why I was able to survive 18 years of an abusive cycle, you have to understand my foundation. There's a foundation built on constant change, a deep Christian faith, and a relentless drive to succeed against the odds. I was born in the mid-80s into a bustling household. I grew up with 5 siblings, 2 sisters and 3 brothers. But I held a special place as the very first grandchild of my grandmother. My roots run deep in Cameroon. I am from Ndop, and my mother is a proud Bali woman. But my story isn't just about where I'm from. My education began with a whirlwind. At just 4 years old, I was already in primary school. By age 6, I was promoted from class 2 directly to class 4. I was bright, I was capable, and I was thriving. But early on, a pattern of back and forth began. My mother moved me between her home in Muyuka and my grandmother's home in Boya for school. That first term of class 4 went very well, but then my grandmother took me to live with her in Boya. That is where my education took its first major downturn. I went from being a child who was skipped ahead to a child who repeated class 4 3 times. Updated community guidelines. Welcome to the Best Tribe. This is a space for professional grade healing. We treat our recovery with the same discipline and grace we bring to our careers and our families. Welcome to a space of restoration. This channel is a professional grade platform for healing, shared testimony, and reclaiming the voices we lost. As a mentor and survivor, I created this collective to empower women through discipline grace. To ensure this remains a high-vibe, safe environment, please adhere to these standards. Respect the testimony. This is my personal truth. Discussion is encouraged, but invalidating my journey or others' experiences will not be tolerated. No doxing or naming. To protect the safety of all parties, do not share real names or specific identifiers of individuals mentioned. Support, don't solicit. Refrain from spam, self-promotion, or offering professional legal advice. Mindful engagement. We discuss heavy topics like narcissistic patterns and more. Prioritize your mental health as you watch. Now, let's go! Watch, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Turn your notifications on for reminders of new episodes each week. Can you imagine the confusion of a young girl who knew she was smart but couldn't find her footing because the ground kept shifting? It wasn't until class 7 that I finally broke through, passing my common entrance in List A and securing my first school leaving certificate. Looking back, that was my first lesson in resilience. Even when the system fails you, you have to keep showing up. Choosing my own path. As I moved into secondary school, the shifting continued. I lived with my uncle and his new wife to attend JMBC for 2 years, then spent 3 years in boarding school. But there was a conflict brewing between what was expected of me and who I actually was. I sat for my ordinary levels in sciences, but I only passed 2 papers, religious knowledge and geography. At that point, I moved back to Bamenda to live with my uncle again and attended a government school nearby. For the first time, I made a choice for me. I stopped trying to force the sciences and switched to arts, even though I had never studied arts before. Because it was what I wanted, I succeeded. I passed 5 papers that year. I eventually cleared my English exam and moved on to high school to study literature, history, and economics, the daily track. I passed all three. That girl in the mirror was a fighter. She was a Christian girl who knew how to adapt to new homes, new schools, and new expectations. She learned how to be fine in any environment, even if she was struggling underneath. This is the foundation I brought into my 20s. I was a young woman who had survived a distorted education, repeated moves, and the pressure of being the eldest grandchild. I had learned that my value came from my ability to adapt and my ability to endure. I want you to look at your own foundation today. Were you taught that your only job was to make it work, no matter how many times the rules changed? Because that strength, that beautiful, resilient strength, is exactly what a narcissist looks for. They don't look for the weak. They look for the girl who knows how to repeat class 4 3 times and still come out with her A levels. Next, we're going to talk about what happens when that resilient girl meets a whirlwind. Let's look into to understand why it took 18 years, the Christian home and cultural expectations, where we dive deeper into the spiritual and family rules of your upbringing. This segment dives deeper into the spiritual and cultural heart of my upbringing. It explores how being a good Christian girl and the first grandchild in an Ndop and Bali Cameroonian household created a beautiful heart, but one that was also conditioned to endure. The altar and the expectation, 15 to have. Focus, faith, family, and the good girl blueprint. Today, we'll explore how these shape our lives and choices. I wasn't just raised in a home, I was raised at an altar. Growing up in a devout Christian home in the mid-'80s meant that my moral compass was set early. Everything was viewed through the lens of faith, service, and obedience. As the first grandchild of my grandmother, there was an unspoken mantle placed on my shoulders. I wasn't just Miranda, I was the example. I was the one who had to show my 5 siblings and my cousins what a virtuous woman looked like. In our Ndop and Bali culture, family isn't just the people under your roof, it's a web of responsibility. My mother, a strong Bali woman, instilled in me the value of endurance. In our culture, we are taught to be pillars. We are taught that a woman's strength is measured by what she can carry without complaining. This is a beautiful trait, but as I would later learn, it's a trait that a narcissist views as an open door. The theology of keeping the peace. In my Christian upbringing, I heard a lot about forgiveness. I heard a lot about turning the other cheek and being a peacemaker. As a young girl, I internalized these as the highest forms of love. I believed that if a situation was difficult, it was my job to pray harder, be kinder, and wait longer. I didn't realize then that I was being programmed for high-level tolerance. I was learning how to overlook small disrespects in the name of grace. I was learning that my needs were secondary to the harmony of the home. This spiritual foundation made me incredibly kind, but it left me without offense. I had a heart for God, but I didn't have a no for people who sought to exploit that heart. To understand the woman I became, you have to understand the soil I was planted in. My family doesn't just go to church. We have a history of building the kingdom. My family has a long, sacred history of being among the first to welcome missionaries into Africa. I come from a lineage of leaders. My grandfather was a pastor. And I have about 7 family members who are pastors and reverends, many of whom have held high positions in the Cameroon Baptist Convention, CBC. The fear of the Lord isn't just a concept in my family, it is our lifestyle. We are the kind of people who would rather pray about a situation than anything else. And time again, God has come through for us. I lived for 2 years with my uncle, who was a reverend pastor, seeing firsthand what it meant to dedicate a life to ministry. Because of this, my childhood was spent entirely within the walls of the church. I didn't just sit in the pews. I led. I grew up as a children's church choir leader and eventually became a choir mistress. If there was a church activity, I was there leading it. Dramas, youth meetings, cleaning the sanctuary, cooking for church events, or babysitting the little ones. Even as a teenager, I was hungry for wisdom. I attended countless Bible conferences and, interestingly, many marital conferences. I was studying how to be a godly wife before I even knew what a husband was. I was pouring myself into the things of God, believing that my service and my obedience were creating a hedge of protection around my future. I often reflect on my family and think we must come from the lineage of Job. Like Job, we are a people deeply loved by God, beautifully made, and highly favored. But also like Job, that favor seems to come with intense temptations and trials. We are a family that is cared for by God, yet tested by the fire. This is the girl who stayed with a man at age 20. I was a leader, a servant, and a woman of deep prayer. I believed that because I had given my life to the church, God would protect my heart from the wolves. I didn't realize that sometimes a wolf's favorite place to hide is behind the language of the faith I held so dear. The vow of purity. The decision at 14 and the search for the one. At age 14, I gave my life to Jesus. That decision kept me grounded. To understand the standards I held as a young woman, we have to look at a specific moment in my life. At age 14, I didn't just attend church, I gave my life to Jesus. I made a conscious choice to ask him into my heart and to let him lead my path. That decision at 14 became my anchor. It gave me a fear of God that acted as a shield throughout my teenage years. While other girls were navigating the complexities of dating, I remained grounded because I was always leading in church, whether as a choir mistress or leading youth activities. I felt a responsibility to honor the God I served. Many boys and even grown men asked me out during those years, but I turned them all down. I wasn't interested in casual dating. I was waiting for the one God had ordained for me. The D chapter, Innocent Beginnings. I want to be completely transparent with the best tribe-eyed. I did have one brief experience at age 7 Sami. While I was in boarding school, I had a boyfriend for a total of 3 months. We'll call him D. Looking back, D was just as childish as I was. It was a sweet, innocent season of life. We exchanged love letters, those handwritten notes that feel so heavy with emotion when you're 17, and we shared a few kisses here and there. But even in that young relationship, we knew better. We respected the boundaries of our faith. I can tell you today, as part of my testimony, that I got married as a virgin to waste. I held on to that purity with everything I had because I believed I was saving a sacred gift for my future husband. D was a great kisser, lover boy, had a sweet voice, and the best artist I ever know. He filled my walls with beautiful pictures of me, flowers, and more. D's sister and I were bestie, and we're still very good friends even today. I don't remember the last time I spoke to D, but I know from his sister he's doing well for himself. I want you to see the picture of who I was at 19. I was a woman who had never been jaded by the dating world. I was academically successful, spiritually grounded, and physically pure. In my mind, I was the perfect candidate for a godly marriage. I had attended every marital conference and Bible meeting available to me. I thought my purity and my Job-like favor were my protection. I didn't realize that to a narcissist, a woman with this level of light, purity, and lack of worldliness is the ultimate prize. I wasn't looking for a wolf because I had never seen one. I was looking for a partner to serve God with. As we move into the next segment, I want you to think about your own season of innocence and how your very best traits were the ones used to set the trap. The favor, the fire, and the final moments of peace, the lineage of Job. As I look back at my foundation from the vantage point of 2026, I see a pattern that many of you in the Best Tribe might recognize in your own lives. I often say my family comes from the lineage of Job. We are a people deeply loved by God, beautifully made, favored, and meticulously cared for. But with that favor comes the fire. Just like Job, our family has faced great temptations alongside our great blessings. At 19, I was the embodiment of that favor. I was the first grandchild, a leader in the CBC, and a woman who had successfully navigated a distorted educational path to conquer her A-levels. I believed that my success and my good girl reputation were my armor. I didn't realize that the very things that made me favored, my resilience, my purity, and my heart for service, were the exact traits a narcissist looks for to sustain himself. The setup, a home for a heart. I was standing at a crossroads. After years of moving between Muyuka, Buea, and Bamenda, living with uncles and in boarding schools, I was tired of being a guest. I had a deep, godly hunger for a home that was truly mine. I had spent my teenage years attending marital conferences and studying the Bible, preparing myself to be the perfect helpmeet. I was academically whole, spiritually grounded, and physically pure. I thought I was ready for a partner to build a kingdom life with. I didn't know that my lack of experience with the D's of the world has left me with a massive blind spot. I was looking for the image of God in a man who was only wearing a mask of it. This was the girl in the mirror. She was strong, she was a fighter, and she was full of the Holy Spirit. She was 19 years old, and she had no idea that her 18-year escape was about to begin. Thank you for joining me for this first hour of my testimony here in the Best Tribe. If you see yourself in my foundation, I want you to know that your strength is not a mistake, even if it was used against you. Next Thursday at 8 p.m. EST, we move into Chapter 1, Episode 2, The Whirlwind. We are going to talk about the day he walked into my life and how he used my very faith to set a trap I wouldn't escape for nearly 2 decades. I'll see you then. Subscribe, like, comment, share with friends to join our Best Tribe. Beautiful, empowered, successful, and thankful. Join us weekly and engage with my content. Best.